Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? It's early on a Sunday morning for us as we sit down and record this, and it's gonna be kind of a quick and loose show. Don't have too much that we've been tackling. Lots of little small things here. Before we dive into that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast everywhere you can. If you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. No new patrons this week, at least last I checked. But if you do support us, we'll give you a little welcome shout out, and you can support us and be a monthly Patreon producer, a weekly level Patreon producer, all that fun stuff. Get shout outs here at the top of every show. But barring that, let's just kind of dive right in. So what's new, Cam? What you been up to? What we got a handful of little things you've been kind of playing and talking about. What do you want to focus on first?
Let's just touch on it really briefly,
Yep.
because we won't get into too much detail about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing The Last of Us Part Two.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
you and I had a very I had a very intense reaction to a particular point in the story.
Yep.
That literally I put the controller down for, what was it, 5 days?
It's been a while, yeah. Like I
Yeah.
was looking back through kind of our texts when I hit you up this morning,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was a few days ago.
Yeah. This
What would that have
is
been?
I will say, so far. Uh,
Tuesday, yeah.
yeah, Tuesday, since Tuesday. I tweeted out about it too. I was like, I've got to this point, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna keep going. And last night, I made the decision to keep going in it.
Cool.
We'll see where it goes. I will say that, uh, just a quick couple of notes. I love Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I love the different factions of the WLF and the Scars.
Yep.
I love, for the first time, I love the the zombies in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
I despise them in The Last of Us because they were so just because they were meant to be powerful and to mess up your day. And this time, I think that you know you're dealing with, you're playing capable people, and so it's not as difficult. But loving the combat of that. We'll definitely get into it more when I finish it and we do a spoiler cast. But um, I am playing through that right now. That is kind of like
Yeah.
a focus of mine right now, for sure.
Yeah, that's like one of the big things that like you kind of alluded to, where we'll save like formal Last of Us impressions until until more of us can sit down and have like a good fun conversation about the game as a whole, rather than kind of talking about it and tiptoeing around it on something like this. I beat it a couple weeks ago, and like replayed it and platinumed it, and I I started working on the review for it. I don't know, like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago maybe,
Hmm.
and like I just haven't I haven't been able to, like, largely I think just because of the world we live in today. I just haven't been able to like really motivate myself to sit down and finish the review. And there was I sat down and looked back at it this week, and hopped into it a little bit and wrote a little bit more about it. But it was like, what do I want to say about that game? Because I definitely have thoughts about it, but I don't know if the written review or something is the thing I like. I look forward to having the conversation with people about that game. I don't really know if I have anything to add to the like review discourse of the game. I think there's a lot of cool stuff there, but like also so much of the stuff I want to talk about in that game is stuff that like I would consider spoilery, and so like it's what people face with the review embargo of that game is that like the turning point that you're kind of discussing is what people were forbidden about talking about in the original review of that game. So, like to address a lot of that stuff in in a meaningful kind of way through a written review is very difficult to really try and like nail down. And even doing what I did with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and basically coming up with like, here's the spoiler free part of the review, and then here's the like spoilery part of the review, has just been like difficult, and I haven't really been motivated to do it. So we'll see if I can muster up the wherewithal to sit down and do it. But it's been just a tough kind of like creative endeavor for me to even just sit down and try and like do a formalized thing on that game, because I just I much rather like enjoy you hitting that point in the game and us like discussing it and chatting about it a little bit. Or I did the same with like Brandon Gann. As Brandon was playing through that game, he and I would have like kind of like daily check-ins on Twitter or something like that, where I'd kind of like gauge where he's feeling on the game and stuff like that. So it's definitely a game that that is something that I look forward to discussing with people and how they engage with it for like the months and years to come and stuff. But it's still so new, and there are still so many people that I know that haven't played it or haven't finished it, or that aren't haven't sat down with it yet. So it's like I'm like champing at the bit to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the kind of thing that like, especially like when we're out and able to see each other in person again, and like go to like an event, like a games event or something, like I look forward to like getting a bum rush of people's thoughts on like, what'd you think of Last of Us? What'd you think of Last of Us? And even like some of that is even like, I haven't sat down with spoiler casts and stuff like that from other like sites that I want to sit down and watch. Like I haven't sat down with any of the kind of funny spoiler cast stuff, or What's Good Games, or just any of our other friends kind of in the industry, because I don't want that to color necessarily like the review that I have that I've been writing. So it's a complicated like tightrope to walk really for me. It's like I want to engage in like the discussion around this game, but I also haven't like been motivated enough to like get to that point where I can engage in the discussion around the game. So it's a weird place to be in.
And I think that's fair, especially with the way discourse can definitely impact a review.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming from it from a like, I was very careful about Death Stranding when I reviewed it for the site.
Mm-hmm.
That I wanted to make sure that what I was writing about was 100% like my thoughts and my takes on things versus like something that somebody else might have done. And so in regards to that, like I totally understand where you're coming from on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a pretty big deal when it comes to when you're trying to form, especially a long form review,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that the points you're making are not only concise and well written, but have something to say from your perspective. And I think that's definitely, this game is a game that has that's built off of an approach where there's a lot of inclusivity.
Yep.
And when it comes to that inclusivity, it becomes a question of, okay, well, what do I as, what do I as Trevor, straight white man,
Mm-hmm.
have to say about this, have to say about the representation of, you know, gay relationships that are on display here.
Yep.
Ellie and Dina's relationship in the promotional material, so it's not a spoiler,
Mm-hmm.
is a very big prominent theme. As somebody who was not out at the time, and played through The Last of Us, and then is out now playing through The Last of Us Part 2, Ellie, who in The Last of Us Part 1 was not like, that was not like an out and well-known thing, and Ellie
Mm-hmm.
in Last of Us Part 2 having her like relationships with women be a very prominent thing to the point where like it's like it's a like it's of course it would be her romantic life is of course a massive point of a game that's so intimately about her and her relationships with people. So yeah, like and it's interesting. Like I didn't even think about it until this moment. It's like, huh, like that's an interesting parallel there. Different, very very different, but at the same time, I will say, uh, and I want to put this out there mainly because it was a thing about news, about people harassing Laura Bailey and Neil Druckmann. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I will say this: I think that the writing and the characters and the people who have portrayed them have been nothing short of phenomenal. And
Yeah.
I'll leave that at that. I'm deeply invested in seeing where um and the reason why I put this controller down was not because oh this game's no longer good. It's I saw
Mm-hmm.
where I think the direction of the game is going, and for me to have be okay with that, I needed some time to process a lot of stuff. I needed time to look back and process the events of The Last of Us and like previously concluded thoughts about a lot of stuff. And I won't talk about it anymore. But it's I look forward to a very good detailed discussion about it and to read your review as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's and like I remember when you first kind of hit me up of like I don't know if I want to continue with this game. I was like, I mean, like I hope you'll give it a shot, especially because it's certainly a jump, a leap in my logic, but like the synapses in my brain go from hearing that to remembering when a theater critic for the Phoenix New Times had the audacity to write a review for a play that she walked out of at intermission, and she owned up to the fact that she walked out of it, but the fact that she wrote a review about it, I was like what the fuck are you doing? You can't like subjectively discuss this piece of content if you haven't experienced the entirety of this piece of content. And it's not like quite the halfway point that you were at when you kind of hit this, but it's a lot of people like in discussion of the game definitely kind of break it out into like a half that you had played and a half that you had not yet played, and so like people that are only judging the game off of like the first quote unquote half there is like it's premature, and so much of like what I think especially the early discourse over the game and people's like outrage and stuff is happening was a visceral response to that. Now, like, you could viscerally respond to that and not be an asshole and like threaten people's fucking lives on the internet,
Or their children's lives.
like a pathetic, yeah, like the scum of the earth kind of thing that both Neil Druckmann and Laura Bailey have kind of like shared and posted and stuff. But like the it was one of those things of like, well, if you don't finish the game, I definitely can't have you on like a spoiler cast conversation about it or something like that, because obviously that you're not playing with the full context. But then it also opens up that whole a conversation that occasionally flares up in video games, in video game criticism of like, hey, like I not everything in games is about the story, and you can play 30 minutes of a maybe narrative, a game with a narrative, and realize like, hey, like I enjoy the story that's being told here, but I just can't get over the gameplay hurdles of it, and so I'm gonna walk away from this thing. And that's like, it's a valid criticism. I wouldn't write a review that like gives certainly that doesn't like that gives a score to a game like that or something like that. But it's for like personal preference and stuff. It's certainly a valid conversation to have, because story isn't the only thing in gaming so often. There are plenty of like I can having done the whole like my whole infamous 24 hours of Bloodborne kind of thing for Extra Life a few years back. Like now have a deeper appreciation for Bloodborne. I know I still hate that game, and I still like have zero desire to really dive into the Soulsborne stuff because I am not somebody that takes any satisfaction from being repeatedly beaten down like that, in such a brutal and unforgiving way, with no player agency to be able to adjust difficulty settings on that. Like I'm one of the things I'm playing right now, that we can maybe dive into or transition over into is a game called CrossCode, and it came out on PC late last year or
Yeah,
mid last year. I don't know.
tell me about that. It's I saw like Mr. Negative and a bunch of
Yeah.
other people talking about it. Alex too.
Yeah, I think knowing you and some of the gaming conversations we had, I think it'd actually be super right up your alley. So it just came out to console this last week, and it was completely off my radar until people like John, Mr. Negative, and Alex O'Neill and Scott White from Irrational Passions. I've seen them tweeting about it because they were playing it, review copies, I guess, and so I hopped into it. It is a 16-bit like art style, and the closest analog that I think really would latch on to you there, Cam, is the dot hack games, because you are basically playing a character in a MMO, who
Okay.
you're playing. But it's completely single player. It's a action RPG kind of gameplay. But the story is you're in an MMO, because something has happened in the character's life that I'm 10 to 15 hours in probably, and I've really only just unearthed maybe the big bombshell of what's going on for the character, and it's spoilery enough that I don't want to delve into it, but suffice it to say, you don't really have memories, and you're playing this game because some person that you can talk to in the game, and I don't even know necessarily the dynamic and relationship between who this person is and your character, but basically they've kind of introduced the idea that only by playing through the game will you maybe be able to restore your memories, and your character is mute, and it's not silent video game protagonist mute. It's mute. At least for the sake of kind of the narrative, this might be something that you might have a voice and it also has not been restored or something like that, or it might even tie to kind of the twist that has been introduced here in chapter 4 of the game or something like that. But because it's an MMO and the other players in the game you're interacting with, or the NPCs that you're interacting with, might ask you questions or something, your kind of guide through this that's kind of talking to you and introducing this idea of hey, if you play through the game you might be able to restore your memories, is able to occasionally throughout the game give you keywords that you can use, i.e. you can say your own name, so you can say Leah, which is the character's name. You can say hi, you can say bye eventually, and so you occasionally, for the sake of story and helping kind of have some of these conversations, they basically hard code into your ability to play the game some of these words, and the in-game kind of explanation is hey, obviously there are some mute people who might have wanted to play this game, and they kind of make allusion to the idea that the game had maybe a buggy past or something, and had issues with language centers not really registering and stuff like that. So when players in the world encounter you and your limited vocabulary, and you're playing as an avatar, so it's dot hack meets Ready Player One basically.
Dang. Okay. That sounds so up my alley.
And so yeah, your character will nod and shake their head no or something like that, and the other characters in the game can see that and respond to that in kind. So when you meet another person early on who like is also starting the game out right alongside you, and basically becomes like a quick travel companion and basically your first party member. And she's like super talkative and like is telling you about her story, and then she'll occasionally be like, man, you're really quiet. And so like you aren't able to communicate the fact that you can't fully communicate, but they pick it up eventually of like, oh, I guess, yeah, like you really only say a couple things here and there, and they'll be like, so you like, oh, you must be having like an issue with your voice modulator or something, right? And the your character Leah basically just kind of like nods, and that kind of like moves the narrative forward. But then they play around with the idea sometimes of like, you only being able to say hi, and like a character, an NPC, like responding to you and be like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just give you the thrust of your next quest anyway, or something like that. So it's a very fun kind of game. Action gameplay is like part hack and slash, part twin stick shootery. Like you basically have a hack and slash kind of like melee attack, and then you have a twin stick shooter style ranged attack that you can use as you play through the game, and you like the MMO like story of the game is like you're following the path of the ancients or something like that, where it's like this ancient civilization that existed on this island or continent or thing that you're on, and you as the player like progress through the different trials and the dungeons of the ancients, which are a great mix of like puzzles, like platforming puzzles, and just kind of like gotta think my way through this, or I gotta do like a timed thing, using the mechanics, as well as like a mixture of like puzzles and combat, and then some like boss fights kind of stuff in there. And yeah, it's really cool, like great art style, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a very dense game. Like the first dungeon, I feel like took me like 3 or 4 hours. It's like, oh my god, this is like the introduction thing for the sake of kind of like anybody who's playing this or is curious. Like I'm partway through the second dungeon now, and like I was very appreciative because the second dungeon actually gave me like a stopping point midway through, where it was like, hey, like you leave the dungeon, here's like a mid checkpoint that you can fast travel to and from now, so if you want to go and do like some side quests or something like that, you can do that and then come back to it and not have to like re-travel through the whole thing. So like I was like, okay, cool. I wish that had been in the first one too, because like the first one just felt super long, and it's mildly like there are a few points where I've reached where I'm mildly frustrated about it. The reason I ended up segueing into this whole from the Bloodborne conversation is because there have been a few times where I've been like in a fight or in a boss fight. If you die, you don't really lose anything. You just kind of like quickly respawn from like the area that you had entered or something like that, and there's no real like death penalty. But it outside of like getting frustrated, and it does the thing that Celeste did, where it's like, hey, the way we design this game, and for the challenge of this game, we hope you'll play it as designed, but if that becomes too frustrating or inaccessible for you, you can go into settings and you can change. They have basically a few things you can toggle. One for like 2 of them on the combat side and 1 on the puzzling side. On the puzzling side, you can change like the time that you have to solve certain puzzles on like a timed kind of thing. Like as an example, you eventually get like elemental power-ups, as you would get in these kinds of games. So like the first power-up you get is fire, and you can use fire to light torches, or to like there will be pillars of water, and it it has some fun with the idea that like water is like in most video games the death of you. So if you like jump into the water or something, you will like die and respawn immediately, or you lose health or something like that. And so they use water as an obstacle in some of the dungeons and stuff. So you can't like pass through water, but if you've got the heat element, you can shoot a pillar of water and it'll turn into steam temporarily, and then you can like run through the thing before like the pillar returns or something like that. Eventually, once you get like the ice power up, you can freeze those pillars and they can, ricochet your bullets or something like that. So you have to use that stuff for puzzles, and you can basically change the duration that something will stay a pillar of ice or something, or if you toggle a switch and it's only going to give you 10 seconds to get from point A to point B, you can basically adjust the duration there to give you more time. It'll be like you can change it by percentage or something like that. So you can say like, okay, I don't like the amount of time I have to do this. I need more time, so I can shift the percentage down, and suddenly I have twice as long to do it or something like that. And then on the combat side of things, you can adjust how much damage you take from enemy attacks, and you can also adjust like the frequency with which enemies attack. And there have been a few times where I've just been like, I've gotten frustrated by the like onslaught of enemy attacks, or the just like how quickly I die, where I'm like, all right, fuck this. I'll go in and I'll switch the settings down, finish the fight, and then I'll go and like set them back up or something like that. And so I appreciate that like it's a very challenging game, and there have been some challenges that I just like flat out have said like, fuck this, I'm not gonna ever be able to do this, because like some of it will be like, hey, you're going to get like a power up for this, or you're going to get like, a special item or equipment for this or something like that. So like the modifiers don't really apply to this because like the challenge is the whole like part of the side quest. Like there's one where it's like, hey, do this platforming challenge, and you do it normally, and it's cool. And then like the super difficult challenge is like, okay, now do it in less than 2 minutes. And you basically have to do like a flawless run of this challenge to do it in less than 2 minutes. And after like 15 tries or something like that, I was like, fuck this. I'm just too angry by this, to do that, and stuff like that. So there are just some that I'm like walking away from. On that, like there's the whole like item mechanic of the game and equipment mechanic. There are like a couple shops where you can go in and just kind of like buy basic equipment, but like most of the economy of the game is neat in that like you get item drops from enemies that you kill out in the world, and then you can go to certain merchants in town and basically like, instead of selling those items for like gil like you would in a Final Fantasy game or something like that, and then using gil to purchase the stuff, it's basically a barter system. So you can basically say, okay, I've got like these 3 items. Like you can go to a trader and they'll say, hey, I'll give you this piece of equipment, and I need these 3 items and the quantities of those items in exchange for the sword that you want to buy or something like that. And so if you don't have that the gear necessary for that trade, you might be able to trade other items that you have to get some of that stuff. And so you can do kind of like a trade like escalation to get to the weapon that you're looking for, or you just need to go out and kill more baddies and stuff. On the combat side of things, there you basically like, if you can chain combat together and like kill enough, like you'll kill enemies and your gauge will go up, and you'll go from like rank D combat to like rank C. And if you can like keep a thread of combat going against enemies, you can like rank up to like S rank, and the higher the rank, the more rare loot drops you'll get from those enemies. But also, while you're in a chain, your health doesn't automatically restore. If you break the chain, and you can do it actively, like by pressing the touchpad on PlayStation, your health will like jump back up. But if you don't break the chain, you have to like use items to heal yourself up and stuff. So there's a great risk reward kind of thing there. And there have been times where I'm like, okay, like I'm almost to an S rank, but also I'm at like 2 health, and so any one hit from like this next encounter of 3 possible enemies would kill me off. So I'm just gonna go ahead and like back out. Enemies respawn, so like you're never at like risk of doing that. And then they also do a cool thing where like the enemies are on the map, but they usually won't engage with you unless you engage with them first. So like so it solves that like whole issue of like random encounters or something like that, where it's like, crap, I want to get through this area, but I also don't want to fight all these guys, so let me just kind of like run through, and you can usually do that, at least in what I've experienced so far. So yeah, there's a lot to this game, and so far, like I would say like 95% of it I'm loving. There's that 5% that I grow very frustrated by, but if I go too frustrated by it, I can go in and kind of adjust some of the settings. So yeah, really cool gameplay, really cool story so far, that I'm enjoying. You will love it because there's lore beyond belief and stuff. I haven't even dug into like all the different like lore entries and encyclopedia entries that I've been collecting in the game. But I definitely think of you every time it's like I see a little thing of like, this has been added. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. It's like $20 on PlayStation, I think. I believe it's on Xbox Game Pass for people that have that. And yeah, I want to say some of the people I was seeing tweet about it, like John and whatnot, are saying like it's 100+ hours at least.
Nice.
So it's a super dense experience, if that's what you're looking for, and yeah, I've really been enjoying it. It's something that I look forward to like continuing to play through as even as some of the bigger games come out here in the next week or so, with like Ghost of Tsushima and Paper Mario. But this is one that I'm enjoying, and I can put a couple hours into each night and just constantly do that level grind kind of thing. So yeah, any questions or anything else I can help illuminate for you?
No, you really covered a lot of awesome stuff. I'm really pumped about it. So I'm definitely
Cool.
going to be checking it out.
Yeah, definitely recommend it. It's I know people were as I'm seeing people talk about the console version, I'm seeing a lot of people that like really enjoyed the Steam version back when that came out, but it just didn't make enough waves, I guess, or it came out at probably a busy time of the year last year. So I'm glad that it's a game that definitely wasn't on my radar, even a week and a half ago. But people kind of got the word out there for it, and I'm really enjoying it. So definitely happy to kind of continue that chain of hey, go play CrossCode if you like, dot hack meets Chrono Trigger meets stuff like that. So let's throw it back over to you on any of the other stuff you've been playing. Like I said, you got I've got like a list of five things here that we haven't touched on for you. If you want to kind of just do like maybe a speed round version of that, and then we can kind of close out with the last little movie that I sat down and watched.
For sure. So one thing I wanted to mention is I want to give a shout out to a group of people that have actually been helping me a lot through quarantine.
Okay.
And that's the crew over at Dimension 20. Dimension 20 is a lesser known, still very popular, but lesser known Dungeons and Dragons show where they do different things. They have broken out seasons where they do different stuff. Right now they've been putting out what's called A Crown of Candy, which is a Game of Thrones-esque story with the high risk and political intrigue and massive battles and everything that you'd expect from a Game of Thrones world, but it's done in the setting of basically like Candyland.
Nice.
Like the people are candy people. There's candy people. There's like vegetable people. Like there's literally a character who is just a cold milk bottle.
Nice. I'm just realized, because I was like, I know I've heard of Dimension 20, and I know you've talked about it previously to me, but I was like, who's involved in Dimension 20? And I'm realizing it's a lot of the now formerly of College Humor kind of people. So shout out to them.
Yeah. So Dimension 20 is owned by College Humor.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
College Humor basically is like closed itself down or whatever.
So, what's really great about this is that Dimension 20, so they had to shutter their basically live action department,
Hmm.
that do the regular skits,
Yeah.
and their writing staff.
Yeah.
But they were able to keep a lot of their production people and a lot of their on-screen talent people through these side projects, or like Mike Trapp, who was the head writer for College Humor, has now
Hmm.
transitioned to being just the host of the show that he does. Actually,
Yeah, I love actually.
it's
That's,
so
that's
good.
how I like. That's how I started probably seeing Dimension 20 stuff. It because like it would show up in like the recommended videos or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
it's one like I've only ever since I wasn't paying for the lowbrow or whatever it
Drop
was.
out. Yeah.
Dropout. I was only ever seeing like the stuff they put up on YouTube, but I was like I was loving a lot of what I was seeing of actually, and it was like heartbreaking because I was just getting into those videos when College Humor basically had to had to shutter its doors, and I was like, oh well, shit. I guess this is why that dropout thing would have helped. But then it's also like they got super fucked by by like many online media companies by like Facebook having lied about their algorithms and reporting numbers and everybody basically saying like, oh well, this is where we need to take our views is to Facebook, and then Facebook being like, haha, just kidding, bye bye.
Yeah.
Um,
Facebook video. Uh, I can't say a lot about Facebook because of
of work, yeah, I know.
work. Um, I can't specify what I do.
Yeah,
'Cause I work in marketing and advertising. But I will say that what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, like yeah, no, they totally got hosed by the Facebook stuff. They got hosed by the fact that uh, it looked like they were just gonna have regular standard backing from their their parent company without any problems, and then all of a sudden the parent company just said, "Hey, you know what we're gonna do? Make money for our investors, so we're basically not going to fund you guys at all."
yeah.
Um,
It, they did the thing that like all the venture capitalists do, and the where they like they buy up a company and then they you know like lay off half the staff to cut down on expenses and say, hey, look, now this is a solvent company. It's not going to bring in any revenue, but it doesn't have any expenses anymore.
yeah.
And then they sell it off before like they have to deal with the repercussions of that kind of shit.
I will say that the current head of College Humor
Hmm.
um, acted very quickly
Yeah,
to
yeah, I saw a
yeah
lot of that.
yeah he acted very quickly to basically be like, this is a situation. Hey, if you want to hire these people, they're incredible.
Hmm.
Here's like he did everything he could to like amplify their voices. But then he also did a really great reorganization all of a sudden where he said, okay, what are our three most popular shows? Dimension 20, actually, and then the show coincidentally that he hosts, which is Game Changer, which is an absolute nutty show. Like, highly suggest it. It's it's basically improv. If actually is like just nerdy bullshitting.
Nerdy trivia
Yeah,
bullshit.
nerdy
Yeah.
nerdy bullshitting. Game Changer is 100% like just improv, just extraordinaire. Like, it's so incredible to see like the skill of improv that these people have, and then also their new show, which is hilarious. Uh, the basically the new show is they read made up stories as though they were news
Oh
anchors,
yeah,
and if they
yeah. Don't laugh.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if they laugh or smile, then they lose a point.
Hmm.
And oh heavens, there are some incredible ones. Like, there are some flat out just like incredible episodes that are just like so good.
Yeah. I always see. I think his name's Grant.
Yep.
Just cannot hold it together for any of that shit.
Grant and Allie are by far the worst. Allie in one of
Yeah.
these most recent episodes literally got to like the like mid 20s before the end of the episode, and half of that was in like the first like 2 minutes.
Hmm.
They just Grant cannot hold it together either, which is fantastic because like they did an entire episode that was basically just like dunking on Grant, and like about just like him kind of being like not a great like not a super not that he's not a good person, but just like he's made some poor decisions in his life.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really good, and it's really really good. And just thinking about it's making me laugh. But like,
Yeah.
so I will say what I've really appreciated is they've basically said Dropout is really where you're going to support the people who are part of these like groups. Dimension
Hmm.
20, where I'm very grateful that you know they transitioned to saying, okay, so for this next season, we're going to do live streams, and we're going to do it on Twitch, and we're like, if you sub to it, it's going to go to like you're going to support people, and like it was a really great idea. Because sorry, uh, the show they were doing transitioned very well to doing it live.
Yeah.
Um, on the downside, that means that we didn't get like the awesome. So what they do is they do episodes that are role play episodes, and then they do battle episodes. And battle episodes are essentially they use set designs for basically making these awesome miniature tables with like combat going on, so you can like count squares and stuff. But like they're brilliant and amazing, and the staff and the crew that makes them are just incredible. I highly suggest if anybody's interested in it, just watch the first season of Fantasy High. It is incredible, and like these players are incredible, and I love it. They have definitely kept me like sane during some really tough times in quarantine. Um,
Hmm.
I just finished watching the side quest they did called Tiny Heist, which was with the McElroy brothers, which is just awesome. It's McElroy brothers and their dad, and they play basically like the little people stories, um, like little people who live in like bitty people who live in big houses.
Okay. Sure.
Um,
Like, are we talking like halflings or
no, we're talking about like
or?
the littles or like like mouse-sized people, like tiny people living in
Oh, okay.
houses. Um,
Yeah.
it's basically a world of this, but it's done as a heist to steal a roll of quarters from a douchebag little person. And when I say little person, I mean like like bitty folk. And it's really good. It's really brilliant. It's just really brilliant world building, really brilliant like players. Um, honestly, I like Dropout TV is like a 4.99 a month like subscription, and it's definitely something that I've gotten massive value out of.
Hmm.
So shout out to them.
Yeah. That's again like they like I because as somebody who like used to watch a ton of like College Humor stuff and dorkly stuff back in the day, like when they started going into like the pay model, I was like, I don't really like. I have enough things that I'm paying for, so I don't really need to dive into that. But like I would, like if they had done this and it was like a Patreon or something like that, it'd be like, oh well, maybe that's like it like that's how I could like rationalize the cost or whatever. But like one more subscription service for me that just that was like just the one thing just wasn't something I was eager to hop onto because like they did it around the same time that like Screen Junkies did it
Yeah, there's a lot of
and
people doing it at the same time.
yeah, it was, and again, like so much of that came from like them seeing metrics on that like Facebook was promoting and stuff like that, and having to completely change up their business models, and for many of them it didn't work, and Screen Junkies Plus failed spectacularly. Dropout, like I'm glad it's they've been able to try and like salvage it, but clearly for the people that had invested in College Humor as a brand, they were not seeing value out of it, so that's why they like basically closed everything down and just handed the IP back over to the people that were running the thing, and like washed their hands with it. But I'm glad to hear that like it's providing the value that you want out of something like that.
Yeah, here's the thing. I do kind of look at it more like a Patreon.
Yep.
But I also look at it as like these are some like to say College Humor hasn't been like a massive part of like my development as a comedic personality
Mm-hmm.
is just not like it is just not accurate. Like it would be impossible for me to have some of the humor that I have without watching having watched like multiple Jake and Amir episodes like crazy. Um,
Yeah, Jake and Amir were one of the ones, like, I could never really get into them. Like, I would watch a lot of them, and I'd just be like, it doesn't click for me.
Trevor,
But,
it's you
like,
and
so
me.
much of the,
It's you and me.
it's, yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I get that I'm Jake. I get that. It just didn't, like, Amir was just so off the wall for me that I was like, it's not really working for me. But a lot of the other stuff, especially a lot of their sketch comedy stuff, I loved back in the day. And yeah, like specifically when they launched Dorkly, and it was like, hey, we're gonna do all the video game stuff. I was like, yes, inject it into my veins. And I love that like a lot of things that like exist on the internet are like that like we don't think of as like college humor things are like the brainchilds of like I mean like Adam Ruins Everything being originally coming out of like a college humor thing is one of my favorite
Yeah.
like concepts of just anything in general, and I love that like the success that has found, and I loved watching a lot of those initial like Adam Ruins on college humor stuff. But the like even what like Ace Watkins, video game president or whatever, like that came from a college humor writer, I believe. And Can You Pet the Dog? That whole Twitter account was from a college humor writer, or like a Dorkly writer. So I love that like those people have like seeped into kind of like online Twitter consciousness outside of just like going to a collegehumor.com or seeing their videos or something like that.
I will say, I know you and I are both big fans of John Oliver's show, Last
Mm-hmm.
Week's Night. One of the head writers is like an OG college humor writer, and we know that because during the piece on Bitcoin that he did like a while ago,
Yeah,
it 100% was about that guy.
yeah. And there was another.
Which, by the way,
Was it?
if you haven't seen it, it is a masterclass in like just like just it's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Is it Pat Castles? That was one of the old.
Pat Castle was an
Uh,
old OG writer, but no,
yeah.
it was
No,
some.
no, no.
Oh,
I know
okay.
it wasn't him. I was just trying to remember if Pat Castle was the right name that I was looking for. I met him at PAX West a few years back. At like it was one of Jen's like Square Enix Go parties for maybe Hitman or Lara Croft Go or something like that. I met him. He was by this point he was like writing for Samantha Bee or something like that. But I met him and had a quick chat about him and got to like compliment him for all of the laughs that he'd given me for his years at College Humor and stuff. So that was a cool little thing that I'd completely forgotten about until you mentioned the John Oliver reference,
Yeah.
because it was I don't remember which writer it was, but it was like one of the guys from that same kind of class of
hmm
writers as Pat.
They're like
But yeah, like a lot of them have found success in like the writing rooms at a lot of those other the more successful late night shows.
Siobhan.
They're like your Mike Druckers of the world kind of
Yeah,
thing.
Siobhan. Can't remember her last name. She's a Dimension 20 cast member, but
Hmm.
she left College Humor to write on Rick and Morty.
Nice,
And
yeah.
so and you can see her influence in episodes for sure, because she's just a brilliant writer and just a
Hmm.
brilliant comedic force. And surprisingly, in Dimension 20, a very dramatic actress in some of her performances. Um, Gosh, no, like I didn't intend for this to kind of spiral into like a full conversation about College Humor, and
Yeah, no,
and
it's like yeah, it's the thing that wasn't even on our docket at all.
I was like, oh, I wanted to give a quick shout out to this because I just finished Tiny Heist like last night or yesterday afternoon, and I was like, I just want to give a quick shout out because it's just been super helpful during quarantine to have like a weekly show that I know is going to update, but also just having something fun, like
Hmm.
or absurd, like the idea of like a Candyland world where like assassination attempts are around every corner, like political intrigue, like it's great. It's really good. Um, anyway, But okay, so what else have I been doing? I've been playing a lot more Destiny 2. I'm almost at the light level that you need to be for the dungeon. I probably can do the dungeon without being the new light level cap, which is
Mm-hmm.
1040.
Do you
Um,
have like a regular crew you're running with,
uh,
or are you doing a lot of stuff solo, or with
my
randoms?
regular crew is like there. I haven't been running stuff with them because we like basically everybody's been independent until we get to that light level, and then we're all gonna like group together. It's the same group that I ran the last couple raids with. Um, a couple guys for like Ren from What's Good Guardians, one of the head players over there, um, who is just an awesome guy. Got Jake, um, it's just made up of it's Alex O'Neill. Let me actually just pull up the list of people so I don't I don't mess up anybody's names because I'm pretty sure I was just about to mess up somebody's names. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they're all listening and will all judge you harshly.
100% they will. And I won't hear the end of it the next time we play. So it's Ren, it's Jeff Miz, Mr. Brawl 96, and then it is where here? Jake. He hasn't said anything in a while in the thread. I have to go back.
Uh,
I have to go back.
is this like a Twitter DM
Yeah,
thread,
it's a Twitter
or
DM thread.
you should be able to look at
Yeah,
like
here we go. I could.
the participants?
I thought about that just as I got to him. Jake P47.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep. So Jake and Jeff, Ren, myself, and then Mike and Alex from Irrational Passions. This is like we're the six-man crew who like did a like month-long expedition into the Revan, or not the Revan, the Riven um, raid that came out with Forsaken, and we've just kind of like stuck together ever since. It's been really good.
Cool.
Uh, so I'm getting ready to run the dungeon with some of them at some point in the next week. Pretty stoked about that. Then there is
Is the dungeon, since like I remember like the dungeon, or like the dungeon was announced as part of their whole new summer content kind of thing. As is basically a dungeon like a raid light kind of thing.
a dungeon is essentially it's a kind of a cross between a strike and a raid. So it's a
Okay.
unique location you go to, um, that is usually apart from uh, like worlds. So it's similar into that it's a destination from a place, but like a Pit of Heresy is a great example of it. It is a like brand new area to explore and run through, like a raid, but it is short enough and it has like concise objectives, like a strike. So it's kind of like this halfway point between a raid and a strike, and it's Pit of Heresy was really good. This next one is supposed to be very good as well. Pretty stoked because if you don't know, the darkness is here, um, and it
Yeah.
turns out that it is the Traveler, which is a giant sphere. They are the ultimate enemy of the sphere Traveler, and that they are the darkness pyramids. The darkness.
The things that were teased at the end of the campaign on
Destiny
when
2.
Destiny 2 came out. Yeah, base Destiny 2. They're finally here
They are finally
after
here. The
their
darkness, which
2 year journey or whatever it's been.
the
3 years.
the darkness, which has just kind of been like an unspoken entity, has now awoken and has arrived in our system, and we're trying to. They made first contact already,
Mm-hmm.
but we're trying to, like the Traveler, they like their level of like consciousness is above ours, and like what their prerogative and what their priorities are. And so you're trying to tackle with these x-dimensional thought beings and trying to like understand like what they're there to do, because unlike the first time they're not wiping out everything in front of them. So now it becomes a question of, okay, well, what's happening? Then you also have to deal with Oryx's sister, Savathun, the Witch Queen, who is like, you know, doing like,
That's the 2021
yeah,
content.
that's the 21 content. She's definitely stepping up her. So her stuff first debuted
I,
in for.
I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah,
I'm gonna I'm gonna interject real quick, Cam, because it's too early and I did not sleep enough last night to like get too invested in the lore
that is
with you.
accurate. Thank you for cutting me off because
I
I was definitely about to
I
leap into it.
appreciate that like you absolutely like could go on about this for another 20
But
minutes,
we should not.
but
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah, the one thing I am curious about is I didn't look into it, but I know it's something we talked about briefly back when the announcement had come out, and it looks like more information is being detailed now on like just how much and just what all is going to be kind of vaulted when they
Yep.
start kind of switching the content around. What are your thoughts on that? I can't speak to like how much of it is. I just saw people tweeting about the other day of like, wow, they're getting rid of a lot of stuff
Yeah.
to kind of prepare for some of those shifts.
Here's the thing: what they're getting rid of, they have told us up front. This is what's getting vaulted, and they've told us why it's being vaulted. It's being vaulted because people aren't playing there anymore, and the stuff that's
Mm-hmm.
there is, like, relatively speaking, outdated.
Is it Mercury?
Mercury,
The
uh, the
the
Osiris, yeah,
labyrinth of time or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, that whole thing. Like I remember again, like as somebody who put in so much goddamn time before, like longer than anybody else that really stuck around with it in base Destiny 2. Like I put so much time into Mercury and Mars when like those initial like first couple expansions came out. And yeah, like I totally got that like Curse of Osiris was like stupid and whatever, but like I still put so much time into it. So I'm personally annoyed by that, but also like, hey, I walked away from that game when was it Taken King? No, was it Taken King? Whatever the first like major expansion was that brought like everybody back.
Forsaken,
Um,
yep.
Forsaken. So yeah, that came out and I was like a week or two behind, and everybody playing that and like just got left in the dust and was like, well, fuck you all, because I stuck around with this game for like 100 hours after you all bolted, and suddenly I'm now the one that feels like that I've been left behind. So like that's where Destiny lost me. Was that feeling of like I was so invested in that game, and then just like that you can be just left behind, and it just becomes such a hurdle to try and catch up and pick up on all that stuff. So I'm like, fuck all that noise. But I fully appreciate that, like, hey, the reason people left was because they weren't playing those things, so it makes sense that's the stuff getting bolted too.
Yeah, I would say there's that, and then there's also uh, they're vaulting it because it's not being played at, but they're also giving a lot of it some like last hurrah. Titan, for example, is being vaulted, but this entire recent week has just had you all over Titan doing stuff, and it's a nice way of saying goodbye. Uh,
Yeah,
I will also say that
I don't even remember which one Titan was, honestly.
it was the Ocean Planet.
Okay.
I will say,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I did those public sector things so many goddamn times with the spider things over there.
yep.
The walkers, yeah.
I will say though that while it's sad to see them be vaulted, it's nice to know that when they do come back, it'll be with new content and with new stuff going on there. So I'm pretty stoked for
Yeah.
that. I'm very excited for them to dive deeper into that later in the far future. But it makes sense to like it's the Destiny 2 is now a constant world. There will likely never be a Destiny 3. Rather, Destiny 2 will continue to be an evolving world. And I like that idea. And so they can vault this content, and then when they bring it back, make it better than ever, make it bigger than it's been before, and just like give more variety to it. And I think that's a great idea. That being said, I think that this has been enough Destiny 2 talk.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm going to definitely get lost in another lore hole. Thank you for pulling me out of that one, by the way.
Yeah. So a less lore thing. One of your things you also hopped into Smash, which I imagine you also did with some of those IP guys.
Certainly did. Min Min is a very cool fighter. My favorite thing about her is the way that she's able to switch out her gloves. So in arms, different glove combinations let you do different kinds of attacks, and they've
Hmm.
transitioned that here by letting Min Min have different gloves that she can access. I think there's four of them in total, and they are awesome. It like there's a heavy slow one. There's the fast small one that's the jab. There's a trick shot one, and then there's a like long range one. And it is really cool to see how she's fitting in with the rest of the characters. I'm really curious to see where she's going to place. Now, this would have been a great time to actually learn. We talked about it last week, but Evo was canceled,
Yeah.
and so we're not going to see like Min Min be somebody that people would take into tournaments, which is sad. But Smash is dealing like the professional Smash scene is dealing with its own reckoning right now, and they're cleaning
Yep.
house, and so we'll see where it comes from there. But
For more on that, you can listen to last week's That News You Care About, where Cam and I sat down and discussed a lot of that stuff.
yeah,
The Reckoning.
yeah, definitely for sure. Let me think here.
Did you
Yeah,
play the original ARMS? Did you play that at
I
all?
played both of the like public testing.
Okay.
I like it was that Arms came out during a time that I couldn't justify dropping $60 on a competitive fighting game that none of my friends were playing.
Yeah. ARMS always struck me as like doomed to fail because it was clearly just what Nintendo had before the next Smash was going to come out. And as soon as Smash dropped, like anything behind ARMS was going to just completely go out the window. Like, interesting enough IP, but also too heavily tied to their motion control bullshit for anybody to really care about, I think.
I
So,
think that's where it really comes
it,
down to is that as cool as the concept was, it also was like Arms also came out during a time when a lot of people were experiencing for the first time Joy-Con drift. Um,
yeah.
like
It's
yeah,
something that it would be fascinating if like ARMS came out now during like the drought of Nintendo stuff, because like this is a period for Nintendo that like I've kind of seen coming since like launch. Basically, was like, hey, we're launching with Breath of the Wild, and Mario's a couple months down the road. So like their biggest heavy hitters came out in their first 6 months, which meant okay, well, you don't have those since you don't have those a little bit more spaced out. We're going to reach a point where the next iterations of those games are nowhere near ready, and what's going to be filling the gap. And I feel like that's what this year has been, because outside of Animal Crossing, it seems like there hasn't been a lot for Nintendo Switch people outside of like CrossCode that I just spent half an hour talking about is also on Nintendo Switch. It sounds like it has maybe some performance issues on Switch, but it's there, and people can certainly, like, a lot of the people that we talked about have been playing it on Switch. I just was like, I want those trophies, so I'll play it on PlayStation. And keep my Switch for Animal Crossing. But like it's like if Arms had come out now, I think it'd be a fascinating like what if kind of thing.
yeah,
I maybe in a like in coming out after Smash, it wouldn't have even gotten anywhere near the traction it did get in a pre-Smash world.
that's true.
But it'd also be something new for Switch people to clamor onto now that it seems like Animal Crossing hype is kind of dying down as people are looking for something
Oh,
new.
and other places,
Like
sure.
as it is, I finally got my last fossil for my museum in Animal Crossing. So yay, that's fucking done. But like even that, I'm like, okay, well now I don't have to like really wake up and do the fossils first thing every morning. So what am I doing in Animal Crossing right now outside of like, yeah, I'll check in the beginning of every month to get whatever new bugs and stuff are in there, but there's not much for me to do on a daily basis anymore in Animal
I
Crossing.
will say, two games have been a really big hit ever since my brother-in-law and sister got Switches.
Hmm.
Those two games being Breath of the Wild. My brother-in-law's playing through that right now, and hearing him talk about it, it's like, oh, I remember when I was like that. I remember when I encountered that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm.
But to focus more on, I think, Animal Crossing, now that you brought it up, my sister loves it, and my nieces and nephew, like, are in love with it. They play like the tag along mode with her, where
Hmm.
they like run around on her island and do stuff, and like they have their own tents. Uh, they have their own areas, and it's great. It's so good to see that. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
Also on Switch, you've been playing Pokemon,
yeah, Pokemon,
the expansion.
Pokemon. I have Pokemon Sword version. I've been playing the Armor Island or Island of Armor. I'm not sure if I don't recall which it is, but the point being is I have the little armor dude who's a little bear fighter, and he's cool. And I'm now playing just through some of that content, pretty leisurely. But I am enjoying it quite a bit.
Cool, cool. Tell me about Legends of Runeterra.
Legends of Runeterra is a Hearthstone-like card game for specifically League of Legends.
Okay. I Given the last time, so this is a mobile game, right?
Yep. Well, no, it's a mobile
Yeah.
and desktop game. Yeah.
Okay. The last time you sold me on a mobile game, like I hopped in and you basically immediately abandoned
I've
it.
never
So,
abandoned it. I played it just yesterday.
oh, yeah, yeah, I see like the one gift a week I get from you or something coming in through. Okay, you abandoned it. Whereas I'm on the daily grind for that thing. Even that's one where I'm like starting to fall off at this point. But, but yeah, that was the War of the
War of the Visions.
War of the Visions. Yeah, FF Exvius. So I'm setting it right up front. I'm not getting into Legends of Runeterra, regardless of what you say here.
That's
But
fair.
go ahead and tell me about Legends of Runeterra.
I didn't expect you to. Like, this is about like it's about like based off of the world of League of Legends, and B, like a
Yeah,
card game. I don't expect you to play
I'm
it.
saying it. I'm saying it for myself as much as anything. And actually, like on the card game side of things, like Hearthstone, I got into a little bit, but like since I never had an iPad or whatever and wasn't playing anything on desktop, I tried playing it on like a $70 tablet that like my family gave me for Christmas one year, and it just barely ran, and if it did run, it overheated the thing in like 5 minutes. So that was like my limited time with Hearthstone. It always blew my mind that it never came to Vita and that it hasn't come to Switch, because I'm like, what? Like, Activision loves money. Why wouldn't they put those games on the Switch? But I guess they just don't want to pay Nintendo the cut of like, and they didn't want to pay PlayStation the cut of like card pack prices when they could just make all that money themselves. But
I mean, that's the
but
idea.
it's adjacent, but like deck builder. I played at PAX East. Who's the game of it now just completely escapes me. But it's basically like a tactical RPG where you control things through the decks that you get, and I'm trying to look up the name of the game, and I'm stalling to try and find
It's
it,
okay.
and I'm not.
If you want to look for it, I'll
yeah.
go a bit more. So Legends of Runeterra
Cool.
is really cool because it's based off of like turn phased mechanics. So normally in a card,
Floppy Nights,
there you
real
go.
quick. That's
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. The demo is available on Steam now. If people want to go check that out, really fun, like just cute little thing and a cool little strategy combat deck builder kind of game. Definitely different style than like a Hearthstone or it sounds like Legends of Runeterra, but still cool nonetheless.
So the idea is basically behind it is most card games, when it's a turn of a player, that player has their turn and then attacks or does whatever they end up doing, and then they flip it over to it being your turn. Legends of Runeterra is different because each turn has player phases in it. So when it's your turn, you're the player that's allowed to attack that turn, and that's basically what separates it, because you essentially take phases where one player plays whatever cards they are able to or want to, and then it switches over to that next player's phase. So if a player starts, like, instead of a player like just steamrolling through by playing a bunch of like creatures or champions in this case, which are like the characters from League of Legends, instead of it steamrolling, we're like, okay, I'm gonna attack you with like these 8 people that I summoned, and it's like first turn. In response to that, like during each individual phase where you go back and forth, the other person can still play cards on their like during their phase, and so you'll like each turn has a level of strategy before it flips back over to the other person. And that aspect of it I really enjoy. It can be frustrating sometimes, but I really like it, and I really like what I'm seeing from like each champion has like a regular version of themselves, and then when certain criteria is met, they transform into like their champion form, and it is just it's really great. Really, really great. I play a deck based off of Vladimir and Zed, and I call it Bloody Blade. And it is a very like it's a I've really found an attachment here because I've always loved the idea of Runeterra and the League of Legends like universe, especially after they rebooted it a while back and like made it less about this weird random like Champions Arena stuff to now it's a focus of like there's an actual world with actual like motivations and goals, and it's really cool to see older characters get adapted to it and new characters get written for it. But being that there's like a billion champions, I'm not too familiar with everybody, and but I still really enjoy what I'm seeing and what I'm playing. Uh, Really cool game. If you're a fan of League of Legends, check it out. If you're a fan of games like Hearthstone, maybe check it out. It's up to you. Trevor, I would not suggest this for you.
Thank you. I had a Magic the Gathering phase back in like 5th grade, which was like around the time like that was picking up steam, I think. Because I feel like I had some like edition, first and second edition cards and stuff. And I played the Pokemon game and then just like stopped.
I think it's fair.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not gonna like come down on you for it. It's a matter of
Yeah.
I do know that you've had history with like Magic the Gathering Pokemon cards and whatnot. So I will stay like I think the no I'd already said my final word on that, so we're good.
Cool. And then lastly, you are one of the many people who hopped into Trivia Royale. So tell me about Trivia Royale.
It is a battle royale where you are fighting one on one against you are fighting one on one against somebody and basically a 5 rounds of trivia. And at the end of that, whoever like answered the most correctly and most like quickly gets points allotted to it based off of a 10-second timer. Uh, it's a lot of fun. It's very good. Uh, the only like the only thing I've seen in the game that it has to do with like paying money is I got rid of the ads for like $3, which was worth it to me. And then I think
Mm-hmm.
like the iOS version, Android version doesn't have customizable avatars, so I'm pretty sure iOS like you can spend more money on the iOS version. But
Mm.
I digress.
That's one of those like I love that as a pay model of like, hey, if you want to like play this as like a free thing, cool. And if you want to like pay for it without the ad, or if you want to like experience it without the ads because and you want to support the devs or something like that, chip in a few bucks and you'll get that. Like I did that with I talked with Frank last week. One of the apps I got into with Animal Crossing is an app called like ACNH Guide or something like that. It's just kind of a user generated thing, but like he's really great at updating it. So much so that like the all the sea creatures and stuff were already added in like a day or two after that update hit. And it basically will tell you, like, I can look at it now and it'll be like, hey, here's what's catchable in the sea right now based on your thing. And it has like images and icons for everyone, and you can basically go in and tag like, have you caught this thing? Have you donated it? And all that stuff. And like back before it even had all that stuff, it was just like a nice little handy, like you could see the times that anybody was, or that like fish or creatures or whatever were catchable. And so I was like, this is as an easier guide for me than like digging through like charts and tables on wikis on Twitter and stuff. So like almost immediately I went in and like paid the $3 to that guy for the ad free version of the game, and have like used that app repeatedly since. So so I love that as like the model here for Trivia Royale. It seems like I'm guessing you kind of got into it based off of like kind of funny getting into it, and like just everyone in that community seems to have hopped onto it. It seems like it's pretty early on in its life, because I feel like anytime I'm seeing screenshots, it's like hey, that's a weird like categorization of that TV show or something. Like I saw Joey Noel basically tweet something that was like, the big three are the main cast of this NBC comedy, and it's like This Is Us, which is one of the saddest shows on TV,
Yep.
being classified as a comedy, or I've seen like
That is a drama.
typos and misspellings and stuff all over the place in various video game categories and stuff. So is it a very new game that's clearly just kind of
Yeah, it's new.
building itself? Have you encountered like repeat questions and stuff like that at all,
no, not
or
yet.
has it's got a deep enough bench there where you're not encountering that kind of stuff? Okay, cool.
It might repeat questions in like different forms if in like special categories, but there is the Royale mode, which is essentially 1,000 people hop into a round, and you basically are one-offed into tournament structure, in which if you win, great. If you lose, it's over. But
Mm-hmm.
it certainly is it is quite fun. I do enjoy myself a good trivia game.
Cool. I saw Barrett got a trivia royale or whatever last night or something. So cool, very cool. Um, any other games or anything you want to touch on before I close out with my last little topic?
Nope.
Okay. So the last thing I wanted to kind of touch on today, because a lot of what I've been doing either has been CrossCode or I've just been watching Hamilton, but we have like a whole series of podcasts right now dedicated to Hamilton over on that D Plus show, so you can check those out. And Cam's will be on tomorrow if you're listening to this the day this comes out, so you can check out me and Cam talking about Hamilton for a couple hours. So rather than talk about that on here, I sat down and watched Palm Springs, which is a new movie on Hulu. Originally, it would have been like theatrically released and stuff, but obviously COVID changed a whole bunch of things, so Hulu picked it up for streaming rights, so you can watch it there. And this is something that I've had my eye on for a little while, a few months. It made waves at Cannes, maybe, or one of the Sundance. I don't know. Made waves at one of the like indie kind of circuit things, and it has the record actually for like the most money paid for a distribution deal at one of those events, by 69 cents. Because if you don't know, Palm Springs was created by the people behind Lonely Island. So Andy Samberg, Kiva Goldsmith, and no, I forget the last one's name. Sorry, but the guys that did like SNL digital shorts for many, many years, and had their own kind of short-lived series pilot thing, I think. Sketch stuff in a digital age. And Lonely Island did this movie Palm Springs. Andy Samberg stars with Kristen Milioti, who was the titular mother in the last season of How I Met Your Mother. That's where probably most people know her from. I know her as well from the stage musical version of the Broadway show of the film Once. She played the girl in that and was fucking phenomenal in it, at least from the soundtrack I've heard. Anyway, and then J.K. Simmons is also kind of a main role in it, and so they shopped it around at one of the film festivals and picked up the distribution deal, and it was like, what's the record? And they were like, okay, that's the record. Let's add 69 cents to it. And so the film was sold for whatever it was, like 15 million and 69 cents. And if you go to like the IMDb trivia, like the trivia on that little factoid even says nice, which I love. And it's just them being Lonely Island people. Let me see if I can pull up the actual
Synopsis
figure for that.
Okay.
The actual holds the record for biggest sale of a film at the Sundance Film Festival, so that's where it was, at 17.5 million and 69 cents,
Nice.
beating the previous record by 69 cents. Oh, they actually somebody's actually edited it, because when I looked at it yesterday, it said beating the previous record by 69 cents. Nice. And they've actually removed the nice at this point. So obviously lots of eyes on that IMDb page apparently. But yeah, they did that as like a little gag to be the record holders. But the premise of the film is easily boiled down to like Groundhog Day, but with Andy Samberg and at a wedding. So it's one of those movies where you're in a time loop, and the trailer gives us away. Like Andy Samberg is stuck in a time loop where he, it's the day of a wedding. He's there as like the boyfriend of one of the bridesmaids. Yeah. And Kristen Milioti, who's kind of the co-lead, is the sister of the bride. And so the whole thing gets introduced in the like he's already well into the cycle of having been in this time loop. And he can't get out of it, so he's kind of in a place where he's just like resigned to it. He's like, well, I'm here, so like he knows everything about the everybody at the wedding, so he can come in and like give like this killer toast that like blows everybody away. And the first time we meet him is basically him doing that effectively, or like it's his day leading up to him giving this great toast that everybody is blown away by. And it's because you get the sense that like he knows so much about these people because he's spent probably years just going and like finding out and digging into that day over and over and over again. And on this particular day, he accidentally brings Kristen Milioti into this like the cause of this time loop, which is like this mystical cave kind of thing. And so we basically get to see her have to come to terms with like this thing. And it's a cool little take on it, and they definitely have fun. It's a great mix of like comedy, and they deal with like a lot of the serious stuff, and like he's very much resigned to it and doesn't really want to think about like the past, where she's like very much consumed by her past, and there's some nice twists and reveals into like why they're different, like ideologies are kind of like coming out to the forefront. But now that there are two of them in this thing, they get to like have fun doing shenanigans together and that kind of stuff. So it's really fun kind of look at just that concept, and they do a great job of mixing like the comedy, the drama when there is drama at stake. The sci-fi nature of it is fun. Like they even have some like they play around with like what could be causing the time loop, and they bring in like some scientists and like wormhole theory kind of alternate universe kind of theory stuff. And it's really fun. And J.K. Simmons is also in there, and he's a lot of fun in his role that I don't want to really like delve too much into because I don't want to give anything away. But definitely recommend checking it out. I want to say it's like 90 minutes or something like that. So it's a real quick in and out kind of movie, and it's a fun, good time. And it's when like somebody does that Groundhog's Day kind of story well and interesting, it's really fun. And they do a really good job of like pacing out when like new information gets revealed to the audience. I haven't gone back and like rewatched it, but I think it'll be something that'll be really fun to go back and do a rewatch of with the full context of the film. And I'll probably see more and more like little things I missed or didn't catch the first time around without some of that knowledge, because I think it's just very cleverly done, and so definitely worth checking out if you have a Hulu subscription. Highly recommend.
Solid.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you, Cam, for sitting down and joining me. You can follow Cam at Rev Cabot on Twitter. Anything you want to give a plug to, Cam?
Not at this moment. Definitely a plug to listen to the special correspondence report that I did with you for last week's. For that last week's. What am I calling it? That news you care about.
That news you care about. Yeah.
I was like the nerdy news site. I was like, that's not right. That is not right. What's going on?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No
really
problem.
had a slip of the mind there, but
You've only been on a couple episodes of that show
Yeah.
anyway, so it's not one that you like have to drive or host.
That's
so
true.
Totally cool that you don't have the name for it. I occasionally forget the name for it, and I've been on every episode.
Also, I woke up 2 hours ago.
Yeah, there you go.
Literally woke up to a text from Trevor saying, "Hey, you ready to record?" It's like, yeah, let's do it.
Yep.
I will say though, I'm also keep an eye out for. Oh, also plugging my Hamilton episode. We had a
Yep.
lot of fun with that. I really hope people enjoy it, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else, and nothing's coming to mind. So I will I will defer to you.
Okay. You can follow me at Trevor J Starkey on Twitter, and yeah, I have sat down now as of recording with 3 people to discuss Hamilton. Logan was the first episode. Your episode will go out tomorrow as of this episode's air date, and then I sat down yesterday of recording with Cameron Hawkins to discuss. He and I talked about the thing for like almost 3.5 hours. So that was a super long episode, but it was really fascinating talking to him because it was very much like his first experience with Hamilton. Like, he'd heard some of the songs and stuff here and there, but he had not, like, it was his first time really seeing the show, and he has since, in the week it's come out, he's watched it like 8 or 9 times now. So he was all in on it, and it was really cool getting to like share some of my Hamilton knowledge with him, and just his like excitement for it as a new person to Hamilton. It was really fun sitting down with him. Because I'm sitting down with so many people, we might be doubling up some of those Hamilton episodes. So his episode might come out this week as well. I haven't figured out the timeline of everything yet, but definitely check out all those Hamilton episodes if you are interested in any of that. So that will be my plug as well. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site and check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest content. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this show. This month's bonus early access episode is Logan and I talking about our respective histories with Harry Potter, which was spawned off of a conversation a couple weeks ago about like J.K. Rowling fucking going off on Twitter, and how that was affecting some of the devs working on the unannounced Harry Potter game. So we just kind of did a spin-off episode about Harry Potter talk. So you can check that out if you are one of our Patreon supporters at $1 and above. So go check that out. Otherwise, it'll be out at the end of this month for everybody. But thank you, Cam, for joining me. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.